Good day, everyone. Welcome to our first online lesson discussion. By the way, I am Mr. Cesar Jr. O. Aurelia, your teacher for the course Contemporary World. Before we start, I want to discuss some matters regarding our schedules and regarding the mode of learnings that we're going to use. When it comes to schedule, we don't have a specific schedule to be followed because we are going asynchronously. For those students who ask about their schedules, I already given it on the online class orientation. When it comes to the mode of learning, there are two modes of learning. There are three actually modes of learning: synchronous, asynchronous, and face-to-face learning. When it comes to face-to-face learning, hindi pa tayo maka-avail ng face-to-face learning kasi nga marami pong COVID cases na naitatala dito sa ating probinsya. But in the synchronous learning, since I already conduct a survey based on your answers, most of the students that I handled don't have a stable connection or internet connection. Ano ba yung asynchronous? Asynchronous is a real-time platform, online platform. Ibig sabihin, may specific date, may specific time, meron ding specific um, online platforms kung saan kayo magkakandak ng online class. Like Google Meet, Zoom, and other apps for video conferencing. So, since real-time siya, dapat lahat naka-online, dapat lahat nakaka-access kasi dun magkakaroon ng interaction or online interaction between the student and the teachers. Doon ka magkakaroon ng chance or opportunity to raise questions and linawin yung mga bagay na hindi mo alam. So, since hindi naman lahat may stable connection, I didn't design asynchronous learning because it's going to be unfair for those who have unstable connections. So, I designed a asynchronous learning. Asynchronous learning is a mode of learning that is not real time. Every time you can access the learning materials, the learning activities once it is already posted in the online platforms, you can readily access it anytime and anywhere. Hawak niyo yung oras niyo kapag asynchronous. Kung kailan niyo siya gustong gawin, aralin, or sagutan, nasa sa inyo yun. Basta wag lang lalampas sa deadline na sinet ng instructor ninyo. So, I hope malinaw na yung difference between synchronous and asynchronous. And for you, for the students that I handled, sana maintindihan nyo na hindi ganon kadali mag-design ng synchronous learning kasi we have to consider the majority who have unstable connections. So, kapag asynchronous naman tayo, you can raise questions through PM, through Gmail. Pwede kayong mag-comment sa mga FB group natin kung ano ba yung mga hindi nyo naiintindihan about sa lesson. So, pwede kong i-address yun anytime kasi lagi-lagi naman ako nag-check. Basta, until 9 PM lang ako nagre-respond sa mga katanungan about sa subject ko. So, again, the purpose of this video on our online video discussion or online lesson discussion is to address the diversity of the learners. We all know that not all of you are alike. We have a diverse students. We know that. So I prepared this online lesson discussion to cater those audiovisual learners because we have a lot of learners. Unang-una yung mga visual learners. Sila yung mga babasahin lang nila, naiintindihan nila. But we also have audiovisual learners. Gusto nila yung may napapakinggan at meron ding nababasa at the same time at mas naiintindihan nila yon. So, the purpose of this video is to cater the diversity between the diversity within the students, so that they can really cope up with the discussion even though it's not face to face. So I hope everything is clear to you now. What we are doing now in this new normal is all about adjusting and adapting to the situation. So we have to adjust, we have to adopt, because anytime changes are there, we have to ready ourselves for the changes, and we have to adjust anytime. So to move on, let us discuss our lesson for today. We are now navigating our course. We are now in the Unit 1, Introduction to Globalization. So, ang globalization, ang word na globalization is very common these days. And before naman din, we heard it on the news, on the social media platforms, on the newspaper. We can read on the newspapers, sa mga balita, nakikita natin ang salitang globalization. But what globalization? Paano ba natin titingnan ang globalisasyon? Paano ba natin, ano bang klaseng approach ang ibibigay natin sa globalisasyon? Ano ba yung tunay na ibig sabihin ng globalisasyon dito sa dito sa Pilipinas, or maging sa konteksto ng buong mundo? Ano ba yung globalisasyon? So, let's start our discussion. First, may I share you our lesson objectives? At the end of this lesson, you should be able to first agree on working definition of globalization using concept maps, differentiate the competing concept of globalization, and you should have create your own definition of globalization. By the way, the first and the third lesson objectives are already achieved because of the wait preliminary activities that I gave to you prior to this online discussion. And so far, so good naman yung mga nakukuha kong responses. Maganda naman siya. Very well articulated and well related kung ano ba talaga yung globalisasyon. I read a lot of ideas that really related to globalization, and it was a fun to read all your answers, because you have a lot of ideas. Kahit bago pa lang tayo mag-online discussion, napakarami ng ideas when it comes to globalization. And I think it will be a really big help to navigate this course. So, you have a very good point for that. So, let's move on. Lesson 1 is the competing concepts of globalization. So, from its title, competing concepts of globalization, meaning, hindi lang pumapasok ang globalisasyon sa iisang konsepto. Ibig sabihin, the concept of globalization may varies. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng iba-iba ang ibig pakahulugan ng globalization, depende sa sitwasyon. Kaya it have a competing concepts. Naglalaban ng mga konsepto kung ano ba talaga yung tinutumbok ng globalisasyon. So, next slide. Yes. Okay. Our discussion should begin with this intuitive sense that something is happening and it's not affecting everyone in the same way. I encouraging you to be curious on our surroundings, on or what happening in our world right now. That is the required sense of mind today, that we have to think, or we have to put to our mind a lot of questions. What is happening now? What is the advancement that we experience? What are the technological transformations that we see? And in fact, we have to acknowledge that everyone is not affecting in the same way. Globalization may experience in a very privileged way, but for the other people, the shrinking of the world may not be as exciting and edifying. As I have said, hindi lahat ng epekto ng globalisasyon is pabor ang nakakarami. Nahahati yan sa dalawa eh. Kung pabor ba or anti-globalization or altered globalization ba ang mga tao. Ibig sabihin, ang globalisasyon ay hindi ganong katanggap or ini-embrace ng tao. Depende yan sa sitwasyon, depende yan sa estado mo sa buhay, at depende yan sa kalagayan mo sa ating society. Ibig sabihin, globalization may bring a lot of ease to us, but for the others, it is a nightmare. It is a big problem for them. So, in this sense, we can see na globalization is very complicated, a complex concept. Ibig sabihin, we have to study, we have to research what globalization means talaga. Okay? Government that decide to welcome foreign investment on the belief that they provide jobs and capital for the country offer public lands as a factory and industrial sites. This is a one example of positive aspect of globalization, that when we have a globalization, nandun yung maraming foreign investment, wini-welcome yun ng ating government, which is this foreign investment, nakapagbibigay ito ng mga trabaho, mga puhunan, para makapagtayo tayo ng mga public lands para gawing mga factory and industrial sites, which is very suitable for the student like you who are future artisans or who are in the industrial sites in the future, kasi kayo yan eh, kayo yung mga taong yan, or you are one of that human resource who is belong in the industrial sites. Makikinabang talaga yung mga katulad yung future artisans sa globalization. But on the other hand, in the process, poor people living in this land, also called urban poor communities, are being evicted by the government. So we can see that in the process, globalization is not that ideal concept for all the people, because it can affect people differently. Ibig sabihin, globalization may favor to somebody, but it also a big problem to others. So ibig sabihin, we have to widen our perspective, and we have to think critically that globalization is not a phenomena that will favor anyone or everybody. Hindi siya yung i-embrace na lang siya basta-basta without knowing na it can bring a negative or it can bring advantage and disadvantages. So yan po dapat yung ating mindset, or yan iset po natin yung sa ganyan yung ating mga isip na globalization may be good and maybe bad. So it is not it's not hindi natin pinagbabawalan na pag-isipan ng globalization kung maganda ba to or nakakabuti or nakakasama sa mga tao. Yan. Like what I have said, hindi masamang magtanong is kung ang globalization ba ay good or bad? Is it beneficial or detrimental? You have the choice, you have the freedom to ask that question, because it really matters in this concept of globalization. You need to address the aspect or the whole idea of globalization. So the discussion begin with two premises. First, globalization is a complex phenomenon that it occurs in a multiple level. Second, it is an uneven process that affects people differently. So, class, I set your mind that when we I already set your mind, and I hope it already set in this way, that when you hear globalization, it it is not a a very good a very good situation, or hindi siya yung pag narinig mo yung salitang globalization, hindi siya yung masasabi mong masarap sa tenga. Ang ibig sabihin, hindi siya puro magaganda yung nangyayari, but it is an even process that affects people differently. Ibig sabihin, meron din siyang disadvantages na dapat nating i-address when we are studying globalization, because people are differently in many ways. So, this is just an introduction for the lesson 1, 'di ba? Baka na puno na kayo, or na-overwhelm kayo sa mga sinabi ko, but that just an introduction. I just set your mind na when we discuss globalization, wag lang maging sarado yung isipan nyo na pag globalization maganda yan, ganito yan. But we have to set our mind always that there's a thing, may disadvantage, meron ding advantages. Ganun po dapat yung set ng mind natin. Tingnan natin yung perspective ng mga bagay-bagay. So, let's start to our formal discussion, or to the body of our discussion. Yan. Globalization as a process. Like I've said before, there are competing concepts of globalization. So, expect that when we define globalization, it is differently, in a different perspective, or in a different way, because globalization is a multifaceted phenomenon. Okay? Globalization as a process. Some entities like the British Broadcasting Corporation emphasize that globalization is a process by which the world is becoming increasingly interconnected as a result of massively increased trade and cultural exchange, which has increased the production of goods and services and has been taking places for hundreds of years, but had speeded up enormously over the half of a century. So, globalization as a process. When you say a process, it is an ongoing event. Ibig sabihin, we are continuously doing that because it's a process. And when you say globalization, it focuses on the becoming increasingly interconnected of the part of the world. Ibig sabihin, yung mga bansa sa mundo, nag-shrink na. Ibig sabihin, nagiging connected na sila, or nagiging malapit na sa isa't isa. Ibig sabihin, globalization as a process, ito yung proseso na kung saan ang mundo ay nagkakaroon ng mga connection sa isa't isa. Which is makikita mo ito in the form of trade, yung pakikipagkalakalan, yung pagkakaroon ng palitan ng kultura, yung pagkakaroon ng pag-produce ng maraming goods and services, yung pagkakaroon ng nag-i-import tayo, nag-i-export tayo ng mga produkto natin sa ibang bansa. Yun po yung sinasabing globalisasyon as a process. Yung proseso ng pagkakaroon ng koneksyon ng mga bansa sa mundo. At makikita yon sa pamamagitan ng kalakalan, kultura, pag-produce ng mga goods and services, pagkakaroon ng import, at the same time the export of different products. And hindi lang po ngayon yan nangyayari, before pa po nangyayari na yan. So it's the process. We are still in the process of becoming increasingly interconnected. Interconnected meaning meron na silang connection sa isa't isa. At hindi po yan ngayon lang nangyayari. Dati pa po yan nangyayari, and we still in the process. Kaya we define globalization as a process. I hope it's clear to everyone, to everybody. Okay. Again, globalization as a process. Thomas Larson, 2001, in his book, The Race to the Top, the real story of globalization, has defined the term as the process of world shrinkage of distance getting shorter, things moving closer. Yan, like I've said before, they are we as part of the world, as a country of the world, not not literally getting shorter or moving closer na lalapit talaga tayo. Hindi yun yung literal na pakahulugan ng statement ito. But that is the process of world shrinkage of distance getting shorter, things moving closer. Ibig sabihin, we can we can put our products, we can put our culture, we can put our human resources to the other country without any problem. Ibig sabihin, smoothly nakakapasok yung ating mga produkto, yung mga tao sa atin sa ibang bansa smoothly without problem, yung hindi na kailangan ng visa, pasaporte. Ibig sabihin, yun na po yung process ng globalization or globalization as a process. Hindi siya yung literal na lumalapit yung bansa sa isa't isa. No, let's change that mindset. Ibig sabihin, distance getting shorter, things moving closer in a sense na sa pamamagitan ng kalakalan, cultural exchanges, yung mga interaction, human resources nagmamigrate without any requirements. Yun po yung globalization as a process. We're still in the process. Huwag po natin iisipin na kapag sinabing process of world shrinkage of distance getting shorter, things moving close, lumalapit po yung mga land masses dyan sa, sa globo at nagdidikit-dikit. Hindi po siya yun. But that is the process of world shrinkage, which is through or sa pamamagitan ng kalakalan, migration, cultural exchanges. Doon po nangyayari yung pagkakaroon ng distance getting shorter, things moving closer. Yes, I hope everything is clear for that and everybody understand that. Okay? It pertains to the increasing ease with which somebody on one side of the world can interact with mutual benefit with somebody on the other side of the world. Like I have said before, it is increasing ease. Ibig sabihin, mas pinapadali ng globalisasyon na magkaroon tayo ng interaction sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Diba sabi dito, increasing ease with which somebody on the side of the world can interact with mutual benefit with somebody on the other side of the world. Yan. Sabihin, mas madali na tayo makakapag-interact sa mga tao sa ibang bansa because of the globalization. Hindi mo na darating yung panahon, hindi mo na kailangan ng visa, hindi mo na kailangan ng pasaporte para lang makapunta sa ibang bansa. You can go there without that thing. That is globalization as a process. And yan yung ginagawa ng globalization. Binibigyan tayo ng mas madaling proseso para makapag-communicate tayo sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo with mutual benefit. Ibig sabihin with mutual benefit, ibig sabihin mutual. Sa isang relationship, mutual relationship, ibig sabihin nagbe-benefit kayo parehas. Kung nagigain siya, nagigain din yung isang side. Ibig sabihin, ang globalization, isang proseso na kung saan pinapadali niya yung mga bagay-bagay para makapagkaroon ng interaction ang mga bansa or ang mga tao sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo na meron silang makukuha or may mabe-benefit sila from each other. So, yun po yung ginagawa ng globalization as a process. At yan po is still ongoing because a process is never stop. Yan po ay like a cycle, nangyayari na nangyayari. Hindi po siya pagkatapos ng araw nito, tapos na ang globalization. It is an ongoing process. Okay? I hope it is clear to everybody that what is globalization as a process. Okay? Yes. Okay, another competing concept of globalization. Globalization as a condition. Again, for Thomas Larson of 2001, defined globalization as a condition of integration of economics, political, and cultural exchanges made possible largely by advances in communication, transportation, and infrastructure. So now, iba naman siya. Kung kanina, globalization as a process, ngayon naman, it is globalization as a condition. Ibig sabihin, ano ba pag sinabi nating condition? Condition is yun yung kalagayan mo. Your current state. Ano ba yung kinatatayuan mo ngayon? So, ngayon naman, sa context ng globalization, ano ba yung kalagayan ng mundo natin nung meron ng globalisasyon? Ano ba ang sinasabi dito? It is a condition of integration of economics. Ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon na ng interconnection or connection between economies of different world. Pag sinabi natin economics, let's play as an example the Middle East. Ang pangunahing ekonomiya nila ay yung pagkakaroon nila ng supply ng petroleum, ng oil, ng crudo na ginagamit para mapagana or mapatakbo ang mga makina, kasi lahat ngayon most of the industries is being functioned by machines. So, yun yung ekonomiya ng Middle East. Well, tayo naman, Philippines, in our context, our economies lies in agriculture, and we are abundant in water. Marami tayong tubig dito sa ating bansa. So, as part of that, nagkakaroon ng connection ang mga ekonomiya ng bansa dahil we have this called trade or yung kalakalan. Nagkakaroon na tayo ng connection kasi nakikipagkalakalan na tayo. Nai-integrate na yung ekonomiya natin sa ekonomiya ng ibang bansa kasi nandun na yung connections, andun na yung mutual benefit, nagbe-benefit na both side. Kaya nagkakaroon ng integration of economics or yung ating mga gawaing pang-ekonomiya nagkakaroon na ng connections sa ibang bansa with mutual benefits. Or like what we see in this picture, ito is the President Donald Trump and President Donald Trump and the Prime Minister of China. So, they are in one big umbrella and hopefully sana totoo yan. 'Di ba? What a better world we live in if nagkatotoo tong the Chinese and the Americans are working together as one. So, if you will look on the picture, kikita natin andun yung cooperation and participation of both country to really provide their citizens a better life in their country with the means of globalization. So, kanina, pinag-usapan natin yung integration of economics. Let's go to integration of political. Political, when we say political, it's all about the administration. As we can see, we are being part of different association internationally. The UNESCO, the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nation. These associations have their specific goals and objectives, political ideologies, political goals, and political beliefs. And as in the era of globalization, yung pagkakaroon ng integration in political aspect is seen in the different association because doon nagkakaroon ng pag-uusap yung iba't ibang bansa, andin yung kanilang mutual understanding of what specific programs is best for their countries. What I mean is hindi lang iisang bansa yung nagkakaroon ng decision when it comes to managing their country, but they also have a standards. When you are part of this association, you should have these standards, you should have these aspects, para naman you have, sabihin natin, para makasabay ka, or para you are really belong to that association, you have to have standards. So, pumapasok yun sa political na aspeto ng bawat bansa. Ibig sabihin, we get different ideas from the other country when it comes to our political ideologies. Doon na po nagkakaroon ng integration ng mga ideas when it comes to political aspects, and that makes globalization. And lastly is the cultural exchanges. Yes, very ano po yan, na experience po natin, nagkakaroon na po tayo ng cultural diversity. Nagkakaroon na ng cultural exchanges ng bawat bansa sa iba't ibang mundo. As you can see, there are a lot of there are a lot of people rather who can speak many language. There are a lot of people who study different cultures. There are a lot of people who are relocating, or pumupunta sa iba't ibang bansa para mag-aral, just to study their cultures, and marami na rin yung nagkakaroon ng immersions or fieldwork na kung saan tumitira sila sa isang lugar just to study the culture of that particular group. Yan, ganyan na po yung globalization. Yan na po yung condition natin. Hindi na po tayo tumitingin lang sa kultura lang natin, but we, as a human, as a people of the world now, we are on diversity of culture. We acknowledge diversity in culture. That's why globalization makes the world more diverse. Yan. And nangyayari lang ito sa pamamagitan ng communication, transportation, and infrastructure. Like I've said before, communication is very vital in globalization. Transportation and infrastructure. Diyan po natin makikita yung pagkakaroon ng pag-unlad or advancement in terms of transportation and infrastructure. So, yan na po yung condition natin. As we can see, pag nakakita ka ng maraming buildings, maraming sasakyan, you identify it as a rich country, or who have a better lifestyle in that country, and that is globalization. Isa po itong indicator na globalized na yung lugar na yun. Yan. It is also described as the spread and the connectivity of economic and cultural life all over the world. Like I've said before, economics, cultural, political, every aspect of our lives na aapektuhan po ng globalization. Yan na po yung condition natin ngayon. Yan po yung sinasabi ng globalization as a condition. Yan na po yung kalagayan natin ngayon. Hindi na po tayo nag-stick dito lang sa ating bansa. But further, we are in the era wherein there's a lot of spread and connectivity to the other world in the different aspects. Yun po yung nangyayari. Yun na po yung kalagayan natin ngayon. Kaya sinabi siyang globalization as a condition. Okay, again, Thomas Larson defined globalization as condition. Inulit lang pala. Yan. Globalization as a condition. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development defined economic globalization as the closer integration of national economies through trade and financial flows, as well as cross-border migration of people. Like I've said before, napaliwanag ko na po yan. As the national economies open up and lower their external barriers, they become more exposed and more vulnerable to global forces and influences, such as definitions covers what the European Union calls as the four freedoms. Yes, the free movement of goods and products, services, capital or investment and in person. So, ngayon po ang kalagayan na daw po natin ngayon, we are in the globalization perspective. There are such definitions that calls for free movements or free freedoms. For apat na kalayaan sa globalization. Ano ba yung apat na kalayaan na yon? First, free movement of goods or products. Paano ba natin makikita na merong free movements of good and products? Darating po ang panahon dito sa ating mundo, yung mga produkto ng ibang bansa makakapasok po dito sa atin, dito sa Pilipinas, without any imposing of taxes. Walang ini-impose na tax, walang pinapataw na tax. Freely makakapasok siya anytime na may mag-i-import, makakapasok siya without any amount to pay for the tax. Kasi 'di ba ngayon nagbabayad kapag may pinasok ang products na imported from the other countries, kailangan mong magbayad ng mga taripa, mga taxes na kailangan taxes na para dun sa product na yun para makapasok dito sa ating bansa, and that is on the supervision of Bureau of Customs, mga ganyan. Pero darating po yung panahon dahil sa globalisasyon, makakapasok po ang mga produkto ng ibang bansa dito sa ating bansa without imposing any taxes. Yan po yung yan po yung magiging condition or condition natin kapag we already reach globalization. And on the other side, ganun din po yung mga produkto natin, yung mga i-export natin sa ibang bansa, makakapasok na rin po sa bansa na without any taxes na i-impose sa mga products natin. So, it is good for the for both the producers because hindi na sila gagastos for the tax na babayaran nila para lang makapasok or ma-invest sa ibang bansa. Yun po yung unang freedom, free movement of goods. Next is free movement of services and capitals or investments. Ibig sabihin, kapag ikaw ay foreigner, nag-invest ka dito sa Pilipinas, wala ka nang babayarang any taxes. Once you invest, once you put up your business here, kailangan lang yung mga business permits, but the other, hindi na hihingian ng taxes for or hindi ka napapatawan ng taxes sa pagtayo mo ng business. Ibig sabihin, you can invest freely in a specific country if you want. Kasi isa po yun sa mga kondisyon ng globalization. Kapag nagkaroon na po ng globalization, magkakaroon ng free investment sa bawat bansa kung saan man or kung saan ka man mo gustong magtayo ng business. 'Di ba po ang ganda ng globalization, ang daming freedoms na ibinibigay sa atin. Next, after the goods and products, services and investments, yung free movement of people naman. Ano po yung movement of people? Ibig sabihin, darating yung panahon, hindi mo na kailangan kumuha ng visa, ng pasaporte, wala ng expiration date. You can freely go to the different countries kung saan mo bang pinapangarap, kung saan mo man gustong pumunta. Someday, you can go there freely without na hindi mo na inaalala yung mga visa mo, pasaporte mo na mag-expired, but you can go there freely anytime you want. Darating po tayo sa puntong yun kapag fully reach na po natin yung globalization. And you can easily relocate to other countries without doing some process of residency. Pupunta ka lang kung gusto mong mag-migrate dito sa isang bansa, punta ka lang without any hesitation, you can go there. But unless we reach the globalization, pero darating po tayo sa puntong yun. Hindi po imposible yun. Darating tayo sa punto na kung saan yung four freedoms na yan makakamit or magagawa po natin or magagawa ng bawat bansa sa buong mundo. Free movement of goods and products, services, capitals, investment, and persons or people. Yan po yung kondisyon na natin or magiging kondisyon natin in the future kapag na-reach na po talaga natin yung full globalization. Yan. I hope everything is clear on the definition of globalization as a condition. Next. Globalization as an era and a system. So, iba na po ngayon, as an era or as an age or panahon and as a system or isang sistema. Thomas Friedman, best-selling book, The Lexus and the Olive Tree, gives a relatively balanced and oft-cited definition of globalization, which she considered as both an era and a system. That not a static but a dynamic ongoing process. Globalization involves an inexplorable integration of markets, nation-state technologies to a degree never witnessed before in a way that's enabling individuals, corporations, and nation-state to reach around the world farther, faster, deeper, and cheaper than ever before, and in the way that is also producing a powerful backlash from those brutalized and left behind by this new system. Okay, as an globalization as an era and a system, napakaganda po nung definition na binigay ni Thomas Friedman on his book, The Lexus and the Olive Tree. Sabi niya, it is both an era and a system that not static but a dynamic ongoing process. Ibig sabihin, tuloy-tuloy po yan. Dati pa po nangyayari yan and still in the present, we are in an ongoing process. We are in an ongoing process on integration of markets, nation states, technologies na hindi pa nangyayari before. And ngayon po, na sa process pa rin tayo. It's an ongoing process. As a system, it's a dynamic ongoing process. Ano po tayo na kung saan we reach the whole world farther, faster, deeper, and cheaper than ever before. Sabi ko sa inyo, cheaper, wala ka nang gagastusin, wala ka nang iisipin. Sa globalization, pag nangyari ang globalization, hanggang saan gusto mo punta, makakapunta ka sa mas mabilis na panahon, sa malalim na pag-uunawa, at sa pinakang murang or pinakang cheap na paraan. Yan po. Yan po yung sistema ng globalisasyon. Complex po siya sa totoo lang kasi it's consists of different perspectives. But as the globalization explained itself as an era and a system, di ba po napakaganda na makakapunta ka sa ibang bansa, you can travel around the world without any hesitations, without any problems na regarding dito sa visa, sa mga kailangan na mga requirements. Ganun na, darating po yung panahon na ganun na po talaga yung magiging sistema natin. And I like to emphasize that in all the competing concept of globalization, lagi pong nandun yung integration ng markets, ng mga bansa, ng mga technologies. Dahil yan po yung pagkakaroon po ng market integration ng mga bansa, or connections ng mga bansa at mga technologies is one of the many indicators that that there is a ongoing globalization. Okay? I hope this is clear to everybody. Okay, right now we have to distinguish naman globalization and internationalization because lagi natin nagagamit ang international na word, but we as a user of that word, alam ba natin ng tunay na ibig sabihin ng international, and what is difference to globalization? Ano ba ang pinagkaiba ng internationalization sa globalization? So, to fully understand the concept of globalization, let us have a distinction between globalization and internationalization. Okay. Beyond the definition of globalization, distinction between internationalization and globalization are also connected. Leslie Clare reveals that much of globalization literature is confused because not all those who use the term distinguish it clear enough from internationalization, and some writers appear to use the two terms interchangeably. A clear distinction must be drawn between the international and the global. Okay, ibig sabihin, international internationalization is just part of globalization. As said this, that much of globalization literature is confused because not all those who use the term distinguish it clear from internationalization. And you can use these two terms interchangeably to have a clear distinction that international and the global has a specific relationship. Ibig sabihin, may relasyon itong dalawang terms na ito. But makikita pa rin natin yung pagkakaiba nila. Meron silang connection but they have their unique features. And what is that? Let's discover. The hyphen in international is to distinguish conceptions of the global founded on the existing even if changing system of nation state from genuine conceptions of the global based on the emergence of global processes and global system of social relations not founded in national characteristics or nation states. So, Diyos ko, hindi ko naiintindihan. Joke lang. Naiintindihan ko siya, pero kayo ba, pag babasahin niyo, maiintindihan niyo ba yan? Di ba pababalik-balikin nyo din? Hindi nyo rin ganun kaagad maiintindihan. So, don't worry, I prepare a graphic organizers na mas maiintindihan nyo kung ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng globalization sa internationalization. Okay? In essence, Sclair agrees that globalization is broader and more complicated than internationalization. Ibig sabihin, internationalization is just part of globalization. Globalization is a big theme than internationalization. Ito po, internationalization refers to process and system that pertain to relationship between nation states, while globalization encompasses process and system related to global social relations or interaction between international and transactional entities. So, as said in that definition, both are process, but they are different in terms of interaction between their entities. Okay, but don't worry, I prepare the easiest way to understand what is the distinction between globalization and internationalization. Yes. No? Yan. Internationalization. Ano ba ang internationalization? It is simply the membership of a certain country or of entity yan ay entity ha, or entity, country or entity into a group or association that compose different countries around the world. Example is the ASEAN, the United Nations, and the UNCLOS. Ibig sabihin, internationalization is just the membership or yung pagiging membro mo lang ng isang internationally known na mga samahan. Yung membership mo, yun yung it makes international. Yun lang po. Kasi international, ibig sabihin, you have a connection to other countries. Kaya sinabi siyang international. Nagkakaroon ka ng interrelationship between other nations, other nationality. It is simply the membership. Your membership in a certain international group or association. While globalization in the other side is more complex because it encompasses all the programs, system, interactions, and process of an international association. So, what makes the globalization different from internationalization? Ang nagiging pinagkaiba lang po ng globalization sa internationalization is yung interaction na nangyayari sa isang international association, yung mga program, mga system interactions and processes that makes globalization. Dahil doon na po sila, hindi lang po basta membership, but they work as one. They interact as one. They do different program system as one. That makes globalization. Globalized na po kasi sila doon. Yung mga ginagawa nila, hindi lang ginagawa ng isang country, but through the efforts of different countries. But while in the internationalization, you have to work as your own. But you are a member, or you are simply a part of an international association that makes you are internationally acknowledged. But globalization is a more complex because it is encompasses all the interactions, the processes that that every nations interact or do in a certain international association. Ibig sabihin, tatagalugin ko na, baka mahirapan pa kayo sa pag-intindi. Itong internationalization, or pagsabing natin international, it is just your membership, or you are member of a internationally acknowledged association. Like for example, ilagay natin sa sports. Internationally na yung sports, yung level ng sport mo, international na. But, you have to work as on your own. You have to work as your own. Yung country mo, siya ang tawag dito, work ng sarili lang niya. Unlike sa globalization, they work as one. Lahat ng nations, lahat ng bansa, under an international association, ano sila, they work as one, they interact as one, they create programs and system as one. Lahat ini-include nila. Well, sa pag internationalization, it's simply just the membership. Mas complex talaga yung globalization. Ibig sabihin, internationalization is just part of globalization. Yun po yung pagkakaiba nila. Para mas maintindihan po natin yung konsepto ng globalization, kailangan po natin silang pag-ibahin para mas makita nyo ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng international at ano ba yung pinagkaiba nito sa globalization. Hindi po ibig sabihin ng international is you have really the connections to other countries, but it's just the membership. Yun lang po talaga yung pinakang tutumbok ng internationalization, just the membership. But on the other side, globalization, siya po yung mga interactions with other countries, transactions, mga nangyayari po worldwide that makes globalization. Okay? I hope everything is clear on that. Wait lang. Before we proceed to lesson 2, meron pa tayong isang term na i-distinguish for globalization. That is, globalism versus globalization. Ano po ba yung globalism and globalization? So, before I further discuss this, I will give you a tip to clearly or to easily distinguish these two terms. Pag sa isang salita po, nakakita tayo ng ism, lagi po nating iisipin that this word is all about a belief, a philosophy. Ano ba yung pinaniniwalaan mo? Ano ba yung, saan ba nakaroot yung mga philosophy mo in life? Ano ba yung mga pinaniniwalaan mo? But, kapag pag ang isang word is merong globalization, yung Sean sa huli, it is always a process. It pertains to process. But if it ism, it is always the belief, your philosophy in a certain thing or in a certain phenomena. Okay? Let's define what is globalism. Globalism represents the many processes that allows for the expansion and intensification of global connections. So, ibig sabihin, wait lang po. Magkabaliktad po pala. Itong globalization, yan po yung processes and Yung globalism, ito po, magkabaliktad po ha, magkabaliktad lang po siya. Globalism po siya, globalism. Ang globalism po natin is yung belief. Globalism is a widespread belief among powerful people that global integration of economic market is beneficial for everyone since it spread freedom and democracy across the world. Yan po yung belief na globalism na kapag sabing globalism, ito yung belief or ito yung paniniwala na kapag nagkaroon ng global integration, diyan na mangyayari yung democracy across the world. Nandiyan na yung pagkakapantay-pantay, pagkakaroon ng equal opportunities ng bawat tao. That is the belief or yun yung pinaniwalaan na mangyayari. Kaya now siyang globalism. It is a belief na kapag nagkaroon ng cooperation, ng connection ng iba't ibang bansa sa buong mundo, nagkakaroon tayo ng democracy all over or across the world. While on the other hand, globalization is different from globalism because globalization represents the many processes that allow for the expansion and intensification of global connection. Sabihin, ito po yung process, ito yung gagawin mo para magkaroon ka ng interconnected world. Kung doon sa globalism, siya yung belief, but on the other side, globalization is yung mga bagay na kailangan mong gawin para ma-reach mo yung interconnection or yung mga global connection between the different worlds, the different country around the world. Yun po yung pinagkaibig nila. Basta pag titingnan nyo, ism is a belief, while globalization is a process. Ism, belief, yung may T-I-O-N or Sean is always a process. Okay, I hope everything is clear on that. Okay, class, that is the end of the first lesson discussion. I hope everything is clear. But before that, I will make some summary of our discussion. Okay, globalization, sabi nga natin, is a very complex term. It encompasses different concepts. It is multifaceted phenomena. Ibig sabihin, multifaceted, hindi mo siya ma-define in a single definition. Kasi it varies according to the situation. So, sabi nga sa discussion natin, globalization is a process, is a condition, and it is an era and a system. So, globalization, siya po yung pagkakaroon ng interconnection ng mundo sa pamamagitan ng integration ng mga ng economies, ng political aspect, ng kultura, iba't ibang pagkakaroon ng iba't ibang freedoms na kung saan yung for freedoms of goods and services, investment and in person na para bang binibigyan tayo ng mas madaling paraan para mas ma-explore natin itong buong mundo or para mas maintindihan natin, magkaroon tayo ng idea, magkaroon ng mutual benefit between the other part of the world. That is globalization is. Ganyan po kaganda or ganyan po ka-complex, let's say, ganyan po ka-complex yung globalization. It has a lot of advantages. Ang dami pong bagay na magandang idudulot ang globalization. So, when we differentiate international and globalization. Internationalization is simply the membership of a certain country in an international acknowledged association. While globalization, on the other hand, it is the interaction, the processes of different entities in a international association. Also, we differentiate din yung globalism and globalization. Kapag sinabi natin ism, that is a belief, while pag sinabi natin Sean or yung globalization, that is a process. Yung globalism is a belief that kapag nagkaroon ng integration ng mga bansa or connection ng mga bansa, magkakaroon ng democracy across the world. And kapag yung globalization naman po, if we will distinct it from globalism, it's all about processes para magkaroon ng global interconnection or global connections. Okay? I hope everything is clear on this. Sana po naintindihan nyo ang ating lesson 1. Sana marami kayong insights na nakuha at sana marami kayong ideas na pwede nyong maisagot do sa mga activities na inihanda ko. Okay, this is the end of our discussion for lesson 1. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Good luck to your activities.